So, to understand the work of Powell and Pressburger, we have to understand the relationship to color in film as it related to somebody like the Archers during that early era of color film. And to do that, while this might seem a little bit redundant, before we get into film on film, right? We have to understand the logic of color and how early color was shot. But to really understand how early color was shot, we have to understand what film is and what photography is as it relates to the textual medium of film. Because then you have a better understanding of why light and shadow is used in the way it is in early filmmaking. Now, I say this not to be a pick-me, but as somebody who has primarily only worked with physical film, I have a completely different relationship and understanding to lighting, mise-en-scène, set design, etc. than somebody who grew up using digital. And it's partially because of my relationship with the actual physical medium of film. What do I mean by that? So when an image is captured on a photo camera, like this is, I'm not gonna Google this because I took this and I learned this in school. So take this kind of with a grain of salt. This is kind of a friend to a friend explaining to you how a fucking camera works. So a camera has a chemical process, or a roll of film has a chemical process that is sensitive to shadow. So I did not realize that to really give you guys a better understanding of the relationship of analog film as a medium, I'd have to go all the way back to the camera obscura, but I realized that like, oh, I'm gonna need infographics for this. So this is a camera. All cameras are based on what is the invention that is a camera obscura. So looking through this, it's just a mirror and a secondary device to capture and reflect the image, right? Now we found ways to turn the image from being upside down when it's sent in through a lens and a mirror, but this is what it is. The aperture, or the shutter, I should say, I'm sorry, the shutter is the door that clicks, right? So when you take a picture, the shutter snaps and it captures it, and it's capturing that moment and that light and shadow, okay? That is how a camera works. This is how an analog camera works. You can actually make a camera and a camera obscura with film with a shoebox if you really wanted to fully break this down and let you understand how this works. It is kind of insane that we have made devices to capture video on film, knowing that film is images at 24 frames per second. That's kind of cool, kind of insane. Also, I didn't realize that because I kind of have to explain film from the perspective of it being an analog medium, that film is so sensitive to light that you literally cannot like open the back door to a film camera without ruining the entire roll, because that's how sensitive to light and shadow the medium itself is. Now, that's the difference. The camera is not so much capturing the light itself, but it's capturing the way the shadows and the light are superimposed on the image, which is why early cameras needed to sit still. That way that image that is projected into the camera and onto the reel of film is then captured. It is why, as morbid as this is going to sound, early photography was only something that you did if you had somebody recently die. That's why memento moris were a thing. Because capturing an image, especially people, was something that you needed to sit monumentally still for, meaning that really only dead people were best to photograph. All's to say though, as film and, photography and the actual medium of film, right? Not film as in video, but as that medium of photography got better, it did in tandem get better with motion pictures. But without that understanding of early photography and the relationship to light and shadow as it is captured on the chemical processes that is a strip and reel of film, you probably wouldn't understand why early color films are the way they are, especially Technicolor films. But now that you know that, you have to understand that that process of a film reel was then chemically taken from the camera, or no. You take a film reel from a camera and you send it to a dye bath, you process it, and a negative gets turned into a positive, right? When you get photos back from a developer, they are not actual usable images. They have to be turned into positives. Cameras shoot negatives, meaning that they are shooting the shadows as they are captured onto the image, and you develop it and then you send it through a projector or a device that can turn a negative into a positive. Now that we understand that, you need to understand that early color film was designed in a way that either A, interlaced images to give the illusion of color, or B, use different tricks and chemical processes to get that color. Now that you understand film, just a quick sidebar, much like 3 different brands of pencils capture writing and language differently due to the weight, the texture, and materials used in their creation, ballpoint, etc., etc. It's like any tangible medium, there is a huge difference in the brands and the way they capture work, function, etc. Much like the developers played a huge hand in the way films looked and color grading was. Love film photography, I really do, and I think without, over divulging in how much I love to overcook a reel of film, it really does make a huge difference working with a physical, tangible medium in the way it captures light and shadow. I cannot articulate that enough. Now, the history of color motion picture photography is kind of murky, mainly due to lack of interest in preservation, studio fires, etc., etc. Early motion picture. So I think I just want to add this quick sidebar. The reason why a lot of these works never had 2-color or multicolor prints, it is because when they were initially rescreened or reintroduced to the public via television, television was a black and white medium, and there was this misconception that because people were so accustomed to seeing black and white, that since we had color film, it doesn't make sense to give people 2-color or oscillating color channel works, and there was no way to recreate an oscillating color channel on a print in a way that would actually make a work print possible and watchable in the home viewing setting, because the oscillating nature of the actual projector, projecting the the gels, the color gels in between the projector itself. That being said, you'll see a 2-color Technicolor print of the film that you just saw clips from, The Garden of Eden from 1928, and you're like, how come? Okay, I see the 2-color Technicolor print. Why is there no full version I can watch? And unfortunately, that's because even though you can see the 2-color negatives, or there might be bits of the print still in existence, there might not be a full watchable copy in existence, due to the fact that film, reels, prints, and negatives are tangible mediums that degrade, rot, corrode over time. So unfortunately, because there was no preservation of the full color prints, a lot of these works in their color versions are a bit more lost and forgotten to time. And also, colors, you'll hear me mention later, they were painted on, so some of them just faded and degraded naturally. So again, a lot of the thought processes there in not preserving these was because, we had Technicolor, so why would anybody want to watch a 2-color print of these works? But again, early televisions were in black and white, so it doesn't make sense to preserve that early 2-color print. And by the time that technology in color television was around, the idea of people watching a two-color print work was just not something that people would seem interested in from the corporate perspective. I don't know. Back to the video. Created color by giving the illusion of color. Sometimes women even painted film negatives or film reels to give the illusion of colors as the images themselves moved around and danced on screen, which is why early painted by hand films have such a psychedelic color palette and feel. But the earliest color photography was invented in 1861, and it wasn't normal nor viably commercially until about 1907 when the autochrome process came into play. Now, these were multi-channel processes, meaning that they were multiple negatives capturing the same images, all just capturing different color hues in the subject, then superimposing / layering them to create a single image. So like I said prior, a negative captures light and shadow and the differences between those lights and shadows. The difference between early color processes is that the reels themselves were colorized. Technically, the image was still captured in black and white. It's just that the reels themselves were kind of targeted and designed to accentuate certain colors and shadows in space. That's why Kodak film is designed with the warm color palette it is, because technically color on film was designed to capture white people. I hate to bring race into this, but like actually early color film could not capture black people because of the way it captured light and shadow. But early color film was designed to create an illusion of color. That's why Technicolor films were Technicolor, because it was technically color, but it was still the illusion of color. Technicolor films, now that we understand how film cameras work, it was a motion picture version of the multi-channel processing, meaning that it was a reel of film capturing images, right, on 3 separate color channels, and then they were superimposed into one image. Now granted, there are 24 frames in 1 second of motion picture film. That's a lot of images. And that's why these early Technicolor cameras were absolutely massive, because the reels to take them up were insane. That is why Oppenheimer, a 3-hour film, has that big ass gargantuan plate of a film for when they transfer the reel to IMAX. Film is a tangibly extremely spacious and large medium to capture images. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page before I move on to the next part of the conversation, which will be the actual invention, use case, and how Technicolor work came into prevalence in the filmmaking process. The first color film was technically made in 1917. It was called The Gulf War, and it was a 2-channel, multi-channel process. And there were plenty of 2-channel, multi-channel films that existed before the invention of Technicolor, though most of these films are lost or remain partially lost due to negligence, lack of care and interest, and as well as natural film degradation. Though in the year 1935, we would see the first Technicolor work hit the big screen, the first feature-length Technicolor work. There were plenty of Technicolor shorts before this. The film's called Becky Sharp, and this is also after the invention of Hays Code. If you don't know what the Hays Code is, it was the first body of rules and restrictions that films and filmmaking were then governed to before the invention of the MPAA. Though Technicolor was really only used for tentpole and specialty releases, so think of it as ye old IMAX. Some of the notable Technicolor works were Star is Born, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind. This is because Technicolor required a certain level of lighting, set design, which I'll talk about in a second. Though just know, up until Eastman dropping color Eastman film in 51, that there was a mixture of 2-color color films and black and white films as well as Technicolor film, which is why black and white films tend to be reserved for the horror genre and lit and thought about in a certain way, hence why noir is a thing. That being said, let's get into the technically in Technicolor process that was Technicolor. Now listen, I don't want to sound like no conspiracy theorists or anything, and they might have corrected this on other releases of it, but like if you pull up a clip of like the Wizard of Oz and like it's the right version, and if you have an older version like a DVD maybe, like you can see, bro, like her tracks are there. Like if it was truly black and white and the scene was shot in black and white, it would be like a black and white film, but it's not, right? This has brown under, just for reference, and yeah, I'm shooting my computer screen. This is what black and white looks like, okay? So now that you know, just know they painted the bitch gray. Anyways, the four-clay rip that I found of the Wizard of Oz kind of ruins the joke and gag I originally had planned out. So here's the original joke and gag, as planned out and as promised. If they didn't paint over and post and fix the fact that like you could see her tracks in the original version. But yeah, keep in mind that sepia is not black and white. A lot of people think that Technicolor was the only game in color, and that's not true in the slightest, but they were a brand name in color. There were other colorists around. You had Cinecolor, Warner had Warner Color, and then you also had True Color. These all had their distinct look, flair, etc. Some color processes and colors in and of themselves were particularly trademarked to certain brand names. So understand that color was a big innovation, and it was something that was highly competitive in the world of filmmaking. In fact, color was such a competitive part of early filmmaking that Walt Disney and Technicolor struck an exclusivity deal for the first 3 years of Technicolor being out. Keep in mind that Technicolor was a brand name. When that brand name began to hit the open market of film changed a lot, partially due to the fact that Technicolor had color specialists that consulted with the team as they were actively making the film, even coming to set. This is due to Technicolor being slightly protective of their product, having such loud and vibrant colors that the first Technicolor work, Becky Sharp, was said to be garish. One reviewer even citing that the actresses looked like they were in the final stages of scarlet fever. If you notice, the common denominator in most of these early color films was skin tone. To get proper to decent skin tones, you really needed a lot of light. And that the film sets for these Technicolor works were blindingly bright, with sets being said to get up to 100+ degrees, with the actors describing the on-set conditions as hellish and furnace light. Add on to the fact that they had a lot of specialty makeup to bring out the undertones and reddish hues of their skin to really make them pop on screen. Due to Technicolor having a team of colorists, it had a distinct look and feel. But this is why the Archers are such a cut above and in the league of their own when it comes to Technicolor. It's due to the mindset that a lot of these studios had when making Technicolor works. Most big studios would have optioned for pictures like dramas to be shot in black and white, hence why black and white was still commonly used up until 51 and Eastman dropping Eastman color. But even famously, something like Gone with the Wind, with its fantastic, moody, and mature use of color, was still challenged at the time. So I would just like to say that when I mentioned color consultant, up until 49, there was only one color consultant, and that was Natalie Comas. So any film that is actively using the name brand Technicolor process, up until 49, was color consulted by Natalie Comas, who was notoriously known and or disliked by a lot of people in the industry because she was so anal with her use of color. She even said, now granted, I am reading the Wikipedia here, but the rest of the video is not me reading the Wikipedia. She even said that a super abundance of color is unnatural. She once observed that it has the most unpleasant effect, not only upon the eye, but upon the mind as well. She recommended a a judicious use of naturals as a foil for color, and power and interest to the touches of color in a scene. And this was in this was cited, but though in 1939, during the making of Gone with the Wind, producer David O. Selznick, I'm not the biggest fan of David O. Selznick. He liked to say he was the best name in filmmaking. Sir, you are a producer. Calm down. Though he complained in a memo to the film's production manager, the Technicolor experts have been up to their old tricks of putting all sorts of obstacles in the way of real beauty. We should have learned by now to take with a pound of salt much of what is cited to us by the Technicolor experts. I've tried for 3 years now to hammer into this organization that the Technicolor experts are for the purpose of guiding us technically on the film stock and not for the purpose of dominating the creative side of our pictures as to sets, costumes, or anything else. If we are not going to go for lovely combinations of set and costume and really take advantage of the full variety of colors available to us, we might as well have made the picture in black and white. It would be a sad thing indeed if great artist had all violent colors taken off of his palette for the fear that he would use them so clashingly as to make a beautiful painting impossible. And what he's essentially saying here is that, like, she was like, bitch, if you don't fucking listen to me, I'm going to make you shoot this damn movie in black and white. Which is really boss. I respect that. So shouts out to Natalie Kalmus. She's going to be the color consultant on Narcissus, Red Shoes, Life and Death, and I believe Colonel Blimp as well. Somebody even said of the Archer's use of Technicolor to be a delicate balance that was struck by exploring chromatic variation and an emphasis on spectacle within the restrained palette as distinct from Hollywood's often more assertive, even garish use of color, particularly in musicals. You then couple that with the fact that the Archer's works bordered into more oniric territory with their stories and the way they were told, and you have to me what is the shining example of what Technicolor did and how it enhanced the look, feel, and tone for early works in cinema. Specifically using Technicolor in distinctly oniric ways as a storytelling device, which we'll get into here in a second. And I haven't even mentioned the actual bulk and weight of the Technicolor film camera itself. Being a camera that is actively shooting 3 reels at any given time, it not only was inherently extremely bulky, but it was extremely loud, meaning that you were somewhat limited in how and what you could shoot at any given time due to the noise that the camera output, as well as the actual weight it took to lift and move this camera around. So knowing that, you have to then understand that a lot of these compositions are then made a little bit more impressive. That with the fact that the Archers, as well as other filmmakers at the time, well, the Archers, because they were going for a more audiatic look and feel with their films, a lot of their use of in-camera effects are made that more spectacular, knowing that they had to do that with reels that were shooting in parallel. AKA, some of these techniques literally take you rewinding the film back to a certain point and then reshooting said scene. Segments now would be a better time than any for me to cut for commercial break, so I'll see you after the break. Introducing America Online 7.0. Surf like never before. 7.0. We've got it all. Instant message, tennis, Miss Christ, dancing, email 7.0, music, black people, we are inclusive. Feel the internet. Local entertainment, movies, music, restaurant, Seattle, San Francisco, games, sports. We have it all. 7.0. 1-800-4online. So, who were the Archers? They were a British film duo known as Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. They were active during World War II, making propaganda works as well as non-propaganda works. The Archers became the Archers in 1942, when fate brought them together on the set of One of Our Aircraft is Missing. Though this wasn't the two's first collaboration, the pair worked together on many a film prior, including Contraband, A Spy in Black, The 49th Parallel. It was though only in 1942, when writing their film Colonel Blimp, that they decided to become what we know today as the duo of the Archers, along with a rotating roster of regulars who over the next 12 or so odd films would produce what is some of the most exquisite pictures known to man. Though I won't focus too much on their propaganda work and anything that is before their first Technicolor work, though Cat and Berry Tales was the first work that they made after they joined the L-Ring organization, as well as Colonel Blimp. Though you saw a clip of Colonel Blimp on the screen a little bit earlier, if it's still there, I don't know, I'm doing this voiceover separately. Though the film I really would like to talk about that I think best highlights the exquisite use of Technicolor that the Archers exhibited is going to be A Matter of Life and Death, while also getting you a little bit familiar with some of the themes and narrative tropes you see throughout their work, which is heightened because they're using more Oriatic storytelling. And when you use color in that sense, it just makes a really put together work. So already from the jump, the Archers logo begins in black and white and then shifts to color, which is very forward thinking and extremely contemporary in how it feels for setting the tone for a drama, especially since at this time dramas were typically shot in black and white and not color. But the gag is that A Matter of Life and Death is shot in both. Not only using black and white as an Oriatic storytelling element, but it also heightens the themes of duality that is a huge motif throughout their work, with a sense of magical realism and allusion to a more spiritual and existential set of themes, presenting the viewer with questions like, what does it mean to die, and what does it mean to love? This duality is reflected in the film's world being primarily in color, with a sort of stairway to heaven, or purgatory for lack of a better term, court of judgment, where the film's B narrative takes place, being all in black and white. Not only showing and showcasing the power of Technicolor from a storytelling perspective, while also showcasing the use of black and white to create a more moving picture play on word. Thus, the tableau created by the duo is only further amplified by the power of Technicolor's 3-strip process. A Matter of Life and Death being strangely unique because the whole film was shot, edited, and developed in color, but the black and white sequences were processed and then printed in black and white. Jack Cardiff, in lighting and directing in cinema, said that Technicolor black and white had this sort of strange look about it, not pure black and white, but with a rather iridescent sheen, like it on a beetle's wing. It's this ever so slightly out of the box thinking that makes the Archers such an interesting look into the world of Technicolor and early mid-century filmmaking in general, clearly pushing for slightly more abstract as well as Oriatic plot devices and motifs, but then furthering those Oriatic plot devices and motifs in the use case of the text itself, i.e. printing/developing Technicolor film in black and white to highlight a motif in the work. It's not only to mention just the sheer amount of talent they were doing on set in these films themselves. And sadly, I know it might be a little bit difficult to see in this segment because this isn't the most high quality of footage for this film. That being said, a lot of the added drama and lighting in this scene comes from the use of real pyrotechnics on set. Without giving too much of the plot details of this work away, this scene being a actively crashing into the Earth airplane. That being said, the special effects, particularly the matte paintings that Powell and Pressburger used, often had a more impressionistic look, feeling as though they came from a storybook world and not the typical hyper-realistic look that most matte artists were told and or instructed to go for, though they would oftentimes still use more contemporary and or hyper-realistic matte paintings in their film in their films. Specifically, Black Narcissus is one of the best use of matte paintings in films in general, I think. But I digress. But I really do love the look and feel and aesthetic in A Matter of Life and Death. It reminds me of something like 2025's Eternity, which could be a testament to the lasting quality of this film and how influential it is. But that look and feel for Heaven that was deeply informed by the Bauhaus style, which was still emerging at that point in time, was very new and novel. Heaven was often seen as this dry ice, smoke, foggy thing. So to have it constructed in this hyper modern, borderline sleek, slightly militaristic way is really unique. And a lot of the set design and production design on this film, done by Alfred Jung, is extremely unique, using a lot of mixed scale, giving something like the record scene its sense of grandeur. But that sense of grandeur being created by a foreshortening a larger set piece that allowed the actors to view a smaller model from down below. Ironically, they also too employed the use of a camera obscura for the projection of various scenes onto tables. Uh, but what I find really interesting is that the way that they used matte paintings was a little bit different than other films would typically use matte paintings. So most mattes are done as a way to kind of elongate or fill out the set and give a sense of scale and scope. Use them as a way to kind of fill in and add depth, dimension, and textual details, which is a motif that you'll see throughout all of the Archer's works post their post World War II output. But in particular, you really see it here as well as in Tales of Hoffman and the Red Shoes. Instead of your typical foreground background foreshortening, it gives a layer of textual depth to these images. Depth and textual element that was used in a more traditional sleight of hand way in Black Narcissus be deeply overlooked when talking about the Archer's work is their fantastic use of not only hyper realistic but their more trademark stylized, slightly impressionistic matte paintings throughout their works. I think Wild at Heart does a fantastic job of highlighting these more impression. You can see my 5 o'clock shadow. Oh no. Okay, so I've literally been locked into this all damn day. That being said, I just made the mistake, right? And I called Gone to Earth Wild Heart, right? It's not Wild Heart, it's Gone to Earth. In fact, the Archers got sued by David O. Selznick, who was the co-producer on this co-American British production, because O. Selznick felt unhappy with the finished product that the Archers turned in. And then, even though he lost the case in court, motherfuckers still decided to go Edward Scissorhands on the fucking final cut. And the one that released in the United States was really only 30% or 30 minutes of the original film that the Archer had turned in and shot. And the resulting American cut not only was overly explanatory, but muddied up and, diminished the original vision of the work and the original vision of 17 novel by the same name called Gone to Earth. But whatever David O. Selznick was cooking was some dog shit, and I understand it was the 1930s, but lessons repeat themselves sometimes, and it's just always funny. Motherfuckers always meddle with shit, and then the product ends up worse. It just be funny inside, bro. I've been locked in, but like I said, dude, literally, Gone to Earth is such a gorgeous film. I think it's enhancingly gorgeous due to that little shimmer that happens when the two negatives have to be lined up, or there's a little bit of rimjet bleed between the two negatives, so everything has this very specific glow in between the layers. The Technicolor is a process that is inherently textual, and I think it's a very subtle textual process. That being said, dude, Gone to Earth is probably one of the prettiest P&P films, especially because it was a film that was primarily filmed outdoors, but the indoor stuff is just as good. Definitely recommend, definitely recommend checking it out. It is super, super, super underrated in their catalog. of highlighting these more impressionistic tones and attitudes that they had towards not only set design but makeup and costume, presenting characters not as super realistic but a painterly, almost Rembrandt-like, Caravaggio-esque, lightly stylized caricature of a person. But that was also part of the job of the Technicolor colorists. The colorists were said to be extremely anal, having even white shirts being bleached, dyed, and painted to bring out undertones, highlight, grime, etc., etc. What makes the Archers' work stand out distinctly amongst other Technicolor works is mainly their attitude towards the more hyper-stylized elements that Technicolor was known for, not just going for a deeply bold single-tone saturation, but an impressionistic and moody stylization, one with undertones, shadows, and highlights brought out. All in all, creating an image that feels a little bit more painterly, but also more traditionally theatrical. But something that's really nice about the production design that the Archers would employ is that there is a textual suspension of belief throughout it all. While I'll totally talk about like the paintings and the set design of Heinz Hickeroth in both Hoffman and Red Shoes in a second, but something that was very unique about the Archers' work is that it was deeply informed by stage. You know, Oh Rosalinda is a filmatic operette. It was designed to be on film, but it is a translation of an operette. Clip from Tales of Hoffman real quick to just briefly illustrate what I'm talking about. It is slightly hard to articulate what I mean, but like it's almost a 2.5D translation of what a theatrical work can be. It doesn't feel like it's completely translating the entire work to the medium of film, but it doesn't seem like it's completely divorcing it from the language of theater itself, creating a language of cinema that is unique to Powell and Pressburger. Because even other filmings of productions like a Bolshoi or Bolshoi like production, like theater cam, is not to the level of depth, intricacy, and where the camera is zooming and getting as close as it is. It's not like you're watching filmed actors on a stage, but instead it is blocked like theater, but done in the mindset or with the camera and the theatricality in mind, where I feel like a lot of American musicals are trying to divorce themselves from the language of theater and that slightly one-dimensional plane of theater. I don't know how else to explain it. Just watch the clip and you'll see what I mean. Like, and then go watch like another musical and you'll kind of understand what I'm saying. Like, these feel like you're watching a stage production. It's very interesting. I think that's done because of the more impressionistic, less than hyper-realistic use of matte paintings and designs. But like, there are also tons of elements. Just watch the damn clip. And I also forgot to mention that their use of mattes in the foreground is a lot different than the way it's done in American movie musicals. Not to, you know, turn them into pick thems, but like it really is texturally so much different. Like, you'll see a lot of foreground background use in like Disney musicals. Like, I know Mary Poppins famously uses them, but it's the way in which the mattes are used in the foreground and textures and elements are slotted in like in a keyhole way that makes it a lot different than the use of mattes in American filmmaking. Yes, mattes were still keyholed in, but they're keyholed in a way that elongates the like background. I think I say that later on in the video, but I just want to make sure I get that. stage. O Rosalinda is a filmatic operette. It was designed to be on film, but it is a translation of an operette. Red Shoes features its titular 17-minute ballet sequence, and Tales of Hoffmann is a ballet. Okay, it's an adaptation of an opera, but still, it was and is and are works designed for the stage first, are designed to highlight music, dance, and expressionistic emotion. And I think that is a huge testament to the Archer's work. And I can't think of many works that feel both so stage and so screen at the same time, in a way that feels extremely fluid, but these especially lean into the more stage and theatrical elements. And that's before we acknowledge the duality and politics in the story of O Rosalinda being a bit of a political satire that is mildly deconstructed. Being a film that was designed for Cinescope, we see the Archers even using this new film technology in new and novel ways, creating this dizzying yet disorienting scene of drunkenness about halfway through the film's runtime. But the film also has an indescribable quality because the film language borrows so heavily from stage. And that's before we acknowledge, the editing and use of time and space in these works, specifically like the editing in time and space or the characters literally standing still in a matter of life and death. But in O Rosalinda, there is a distinct film language that I think seems like it's in conversation with the American movie musical, but feels so much more formalistic, free, and designed for the stage in a way that the American movie musical simply does not. And I wish I had the minutia to really point out how and as to why it feels like that, but it just does. It feels. So I think I've hammered it down in real time, but I'll use this clip. I'll use a clip from O Rosalinda, and then we'll compare and contrast from a clip from Oklahoma, because that also came out in the same year, 1955. Bitch, who's reading Oklahoma? Or whatever the Euphoria line is about Oklahoma. But one of the things you'll notice in the clip about Oklahoma is that it's shot, framed, and blocked out like any other scene from a movie. There's shot, reverse shot, cut shot, matte shot, all of that. It's shot like any other movie. O Rosalinda is a little bit more formalistic, stiff, and on a plane. And its set design reflects being on that same plane, while something like Oklahoma is just a movie that happens to also be a musical. But O Rosalinda is so clearly a translation of an operette and an opera.
Yes, it's a masks ball. Everybody's wearing masks. Yes, the French gentlemen too.
Another clip of another film, but like take this shot from Oklahoma, right? So they singing in their underwear, It starts out outside, right? Boom, you're outside. Then you move indoors. Then you move, one room. I think they're downstairs at one point. They singing, they dancing. Boom, cut. Boom. Now we're in another set piece. Boom. This is like a 9-minute scene. You know what I mean? Like, Oh Rosalinda is like 3 zones, 3 or 4 zones. This bitch has like 80 set pieces. Like, this movie got so many set pieces, but Oh Rosalinda's like 4 or 5 of them. I don't know. I know I'm not crazy and I know I'm onto something, but like it's hard to explain because I don't think anybody's really ever explained it. But also, I'm one of like 6 people that like fucking musicals. So yeah. But like also like as somebody who likes musicals, like Jacques Demi's musicals feel made for the movie musical. So like I know this is a quality intrinsic to the Archers. Deeply and intrinsically unique to them. Maybe it's the staging, maybe it's the more overall expressionistic nature of the set design. Maybe it's a de-emphasis on scale and spectacle like in the American movie musical. They do feel a lot different than the American movie musical. That's before you acknowledge the slick and beautiful transitions in something like Tales of Hoffman. And granted, these transitions are absolutely nothing new. Disney employs a lot of these same mixed reality techniques with their storybook intro. But instead, the way that these more less than realistic elements are woven into mature, political, oddly existential, and even philosophical stories and plot lines. A way that, yes, was done in American works. Even argue that Gone with the Wind is one of the most famous duality-based narratives therein. A reading that one can really only come to if they choose to grate the text in that way. All the works of the Archers are a little bit less rigid in that form when it comes to textual duality, meaning that they are a little bit more apt and malleable for duality-based readings, but one can still understand that the duality-based reading was the true nature of the text. Though, both of these works, specifically The Red Shoes and Gone with the Wind, both use the color red in similar yet equally restrained ways. Maybe this is due to the subtextual nature of the color red, or maybe it's due to the pop of Technicolor red being such a vibrant hue, but it is something that gave both of these works an extremely tangible flavor, though more specifically the Red Shoes going for a true cherry red. Gone with the Wind uses red as a way to bounce and reflect light. No, this isn't a video about Gone with the Wind, but like, I don't know, you could read the Gone with the Wind very similarly to the Red Shoes, but slightly different. I don't know. The text has textual meaning thanks to the universal and unstated knowledge of the meaning and symbology of the color red. And this use of symbology and color theory therein is what made Technicolor works, but specifically the Technicolor works of Powell and Pressburger, work so well. I'm starting to slip into YouTuber voice, so let me chill out. But I think we might be coming towards the end of the video. But thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with me. I am, as always, greatly appreciative. But unfortunately, the video is over. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here because in a second, there will be no place to stay. There's going to be other links that you can click on. Please join my Patreon. Go watch another video. I don't know what I'm going to do after this. Have a nice one. Bye.